Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're unpacking the business thesis of Firefly Aerospace and breaking down exactly how this rising player is trying to conquer the new space economy. Look, the aerospace industry is notorious for just eating capital and absolutely crushing underdogs. Yet, Firefly is attempting something incredibly ambitious. Today, we're going to look at their unique strategy, their leadership, and the massive risks they face. Let's dive in. Here is our agenda for today. 1. The full-stack space ecosystem. 2. The defense-heavy brain trust. 3. Strengths and future opportunities. And 4. Weaknesses and existential threats.
All right, section 1, the full-stack space ecosystem.
So historically, you were either a rocket launch provider or a satellite manufacturer, right? Not both. But Firefly is taking this true full-stack approach. They provide end-to-end space access across 3 interconnected tiers. Step 1 is their launch services. This features the Alpha and Eclipse rockets, which are squarely targeting the lucrative light payload market. Step 2 moves beyond just getting to space. It's their spacecraft solutions, including the Blue Ghost lunar lander and the Elytra orbital transfer vehicle, which is basically a space tug used for in-orbit maneuvering and satellite deployment. And step 3 is where they evolve from just being a hardware company into data and intelligence. By acquiring a company called SciTech, they've added this AI and defense software layer that integrates directly with existing Department of Defense and Space Force contracts. It's the whole package. But here is what's really interesting about the financial reality of that 3-tiered system. I mean, rockets roaring off the launch pad get all the glory, for sure. But their middle tier, Spacecraft Solutions, is actually driving the bulk of their revenue right now. A huge part of this is that Blue Ghost lunar lander we just talked about, which is heavily contracted under NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services, or CLPS, initiative. And that brings us to this massive number. Firefly operates on a mix of milestone-based development contracts and recurring commercial agreements. And right now, they are sitting on a $1.3 billion backlog. That is a staggering figure for an early-scale firm. It's split across their Alpha launches, Spacecraft Solutions, and Eclipse programs. Honestly, the survival and viability of this entire company relies entirely on accelerating the conversion of that massive backlog into actual realized revenue. But executing a backlog that big requires some serious heritage experience. Which brings us to section 2, the defense-heavy brain trust. Firefly has made a very strategic, deliberate shift to onboard heritage aerospace and defense veterans, completely aligning the company to aggressively capture U.S. national security contracts. We've got Jason Kim at the helm as CEO. He's a U.S. Air Force veteran who previously ran a Boeing subsidiary focused on small satellites, making him perfectly suited for rapid response national security systems. Then there's Darren Ma, the CFO. He brings deep experience in hardware manufacturing finance, which they desperately need to handle their high overhead capital requirements. Ramon Sanchez, the COO, is a 25-year Boeing veteran whose entire expertise is scaling advanced production lines, everything from heavy launch vehicles to guided missiles. And anchoring the engineering since 2018 is CTO Shay Faring, bringing nearly 3 decades of spacecraft design and mission assurance. Make no mistake, this is a team built specifically for defense scale. All right, moving on to section 3, strengths and future opportunities. You might be wondering, why do everything in-house? Well, it isn't just about control. It drastically lowers their costs. By building the rocket, the lunar lander, and the orbital transfer tug themselves, they avoid what's called margin stacking. That means they aren't paying a premium to third-party vendors at every single step. This completely drives down their cost per kilogram. Furthermore, that SciTech software acquisition we mentioned earlier, that gives them highly sought-after AI mission software. This acts as a unique differentiator against their purely hardware-focused competitors, and it significantly increases their win rate in best-value government defense competitions. And having that defense edge matters immediately for one massive U.S. military priority: tactical, responsive space. Think about it. In a modern conflict, satellites are primary targets. The military desperately needs the ability to replace or launch new satellites within 24 to 48 hours of a conflict starting. Basically, they need them up there like yesterday. Firefly's Alpha rocket program is optimized for this exact, highly lucrative niche, offering genuine rapid response launch availability. So, what's the immediate play here? If they can unlock just 30 to 40% of that $1.3 billion backlog over the next 18 months, they gain immediate operating leverage and a very real path to profitability. And looking slightly further out, their continued execution of the Blue Ghost lunar missions positions them right at the forefront of long-term deep space logistics and the emerging commercial lunar economy. The upside here is literally astronomical. And hey, space is incredibly unforgiving. Let's get into section 4, weaknesses, and existential threats. This dynamic captures their core financial tension perfectly. It's a classic tug of war. On one hand, they have robust government backing, substantial NASA and DoD contracts that give them a beautifully insulated demand curve, especially compared to rivals who rely only on commercial telecom constellations. But on the other hand, that guaranteed demand is currently at war with severe profitability gaps. As an early-scale aerospace firm, Firefly suffers from a highly negative return on invested capital and steep net losses. Why? Because of the heavy capital expenditures required to build this massive infrastructure. They are burning cash fast. Beyond the burn rate, Firefly also struggles with the growing pains of a newly public entity. The stock faces choppy volatility, experiencing sharp price fluctuations every time there's a milestone update or a regulatory shift. Plus, they face board continuity risks. There's actually been rapid board turnover, with multiple new directors joining over the last few years. And in the highly complex aerospace sector, that kind of turnover creates potential for governance and strategic friction, right exactly when they need seamless execution. But honestly, the external threats are even more intense. First, rocketry carries a binary risk. Any catastrophic failure during an Alpha launch or a lunar transit can trigger severe FAA groundings, massive insurance shocks, and brutal backlog cancellations. Second, they are operating in a fierce competitive landscape against entrenched giants like SpaceX with its dominant rideshare program, and Rocket Lab, which is currently scaling its own medium-lift Neutron rocket. Finally, they're at the mercy of macro-technical delays. We're talking supply chain bottlenecks for aerospace-grade composites, or simply not being able to get range availability from U.S. spaceports to maintain their launch cadence. Which leaves us with this final, high-stakes question to ponder. Can Firefly unlock its $1.3 billion backlog before binary risks ground the mission? I mean, they've got the full-stack blueprint, they have the defense-ready leadership, and they have the government demand. But does this underdog have the operational runway to deploy that ecosystem? Or will the harsh financial and physical realities of rocketry catch up to them first? Keep a close eye on their upcoming launch cadences and backlog conversions. That is going to tell the true story. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep looking up.